Victoria crouched down slowly, her designer coat already soaking through as rainwater ran down her hair. The little boy flinched when she got closer, clutching the two babies tighter to his chest as if she might take them away. "Hey," she said softly, her voice calm but curious. "What's your name, sweetheart?" He blinked at her, his lips trembling. "Daniel," he murmured, then looked down at the babies. "This is Lily, and this is Liam. They're my brother and sister." Victoria felt her heart tighten. The babies were so small, maybe 5, 6 months old at most, their cheeks flushed from the cold, their cries faint and exhausted. Daniel was shivering too, his fingers blue, but he kept rubbing the babies' backs, whispering things like, "Don't cry, I'm here, I got you." "How long have you been out here?" she asked, gently lowering her umbrella to cover them instead. Daniel looked away, ashamed. "Since morning. I was trying to get food, but they wouldn't let me inside the store anymore." Victoria's chest ached. They, meaning the employees. She looked toward the small shop nearby, where a clerk stood watching suspiciously through the glass, clearly relieved someone else was handling the problem. "Where are your parents?" she asked carefully. The boy's lip quivered, and then, with the kind of quiet pain that no child should carry, he whispered, "Mom's gone. Dad too. It's just us now." Victoria froze. The world around her went silent for a moment, only the rain pounding against the pavement. She didn't know why it hit her so hard. Maybe because, once upon a time, she had been Daniel. Decades ago, she'd been a scared little girl sitting in a storm, clutching her younger sister after their mother had disappeared into the night and never come back. She had promised never to be that helpless again, and she had kept that promise with ruthless determination. She built empires, crushed competitors, and became one of the wealthiest women in the country. But somewhere along the way, she'd buried the memory of that night, until now. Victoria swallowed hard. "Come with me," she said. "You're not staying out here." Daniel shook his head. "No, we can't. People don't like us in rich cars." She almost smiled through the ache in her chest. "Then it's a good thing this one's mine." He hesitated, glancing at the luxury car and then at her. Finally, after another desperate glance at the babies, he nodded slowly. Victoria motioned to her driver, who rushed over and opened the door. She carefully helped Daniel and the twins inside. The moment they felt the warmth of the car, the babies let out tiny sighs of relief. Daniel just stared, wide-eyed, as the leather seats and soft lights surrounded them. "It's okay," she said, sitting beside him. "You're safe now." As the car pulled away, Victoria asked her assistant over the intercom to cancel her gala appearance. There was something far more important now. Back at her penthouse, a glittering palace high above the city, the boy's expression was pure disbelief. The glass walls, chandeliers, and marble floors might as well have been another planet to him. "You live here," he whispered, his voice small. "I do," she replied. "And for tonight, so do you." He shook his head. "We'll just stay on the floor. We don't need much." Her throat tightened again. "You'll stay in a warm bed," she said gently. "All of you." Her housekeeper, Margaret, gasped when she saw them, 3 soaked children in the arms of the city's most famous billionaire. But Victoria simply said, "Prepare the guest room. Hot baths, warm milk, and food." Margaret nodded and hurried off. While the babies were being cleaned and dressed in soft baby clothes borrowed from a friend's nursery, Victoria sat with Daniel by the fireplace. He held a cup of hot chocolate with both hands, staring into the flames as though lost in a memory. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then spoke in a shaky voice. "Dad worked in construction. He fell from a building last year. Mom tried to keep us together, but she got sick. We couldn't buy medicine anymore. She died 2 weeks ago. I didn't know what else to do." His voice cracked, and his eyes filled with tears he had tried too hard to hold back. "I just wanted to keep them warm. I promised her I would." Victoria reached over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You kept your promise, Daniel. You did everything a big brother should do." For a moment, the woman who ruled boardrooms and commanded millions just sat there, silent, watching the brave little boy who had carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. Her own reflection in the window, polished, powerful, distant, suddenly felt hollow. All her riches, her empire, her prestige, none of it compared to what this child had, a heart willing to sacrifice everything for love. When the babies were fed and sleeping soundly in the guest room, Daniel refused to leave their side. He sat on the edge of the bed, holding Lily's tiny hand, his eyelids drooping from exhaustion. Victoria stood in the doorway, watching. For the first time in years, she felt something stir in her chest, something she'd locked away long ago. She whispered to Margaret, "Find out everything about him. Family records, next of kin, anything. I want to know who he is and where he came from." Margaret nodded. Later that night, as rain still lashed the windows, Victoria sat alone in her study. A photograph caught her eye, one she kept hidden in her desk drawer. It showed two young girls, dirty and hungry, sitting under a bridge. One of them was her. The other, her little sister, who hadn't survived that winter. A tear slipped down Victoria's cheek as she looked toward the guest room door. Maybe, just maybe, fate had brought Daniel into her life for a reason. She whispered to herself, "You're safe now, little ones. I promise." Outside, the storm slowly began to fade, but inside that glass tower, something far more powerful was beginning, the healing of a heart that had forgotten how to feel. And Victoria Lane, the billionaire who thought she had everything, didn't yet know that the boy she found in the rain would soon change her life forever. Morning sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the city in soft gold. Victoria hadn't slept all night. Her mind kept replaying the image of Daniel in the rain, clutching those tiny babies like his whole world depended on it. She found herself walking quietly down the hall toward the guest room. When she peeked in, Daniel was still asleep in the chair beside the crib, his head resting on his arm. The twins were curled up together under warm blankets, breathing softly. Something inside her melted completely. Margaret entered with a soft knock. "Ma'am, I did what you asked. I found some information about the boy and his family." Victoria turned, her expression tightening. And, the older woman handed her a thin file. "You should see this for yourself." Victoria opened the folder slowly. Her eyes scanned the printed pages, and suddenly, her breath caught in her throat. It listed the names. Father, Ethan Cross. Mother, Rachel Lane. Her heart stopped. Lane. That was her last name. Her fingers trembled as she flipped to the next page, a photo of the mother. The woman in the picture had warm brown eyes, soft features, and the same tiny scar above her left eyebrow that Victoria remembered from childhood. Her sister, Rachel, the sister she thought had died over 20 years ago. Victoria staggered back, gripping the edge of the desk. "No, no, this can't be." Her voice broke. Margaret looked concerned. "Ma'am, are you all right?" Victoria could barely speak. "That boy, those babies, they're my sister's children." She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to hold back the wave of emotions flooding through her. All those years she'd searched, sent private investigators, made inquiries, begged for answers, and nothing. Rachel had vanished after running away from home as a teenager. Victoria had assumed the worst. But she was alive, and she'd had a family. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "She was alive, all this time." Margaret laid a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It seems she passed just recently. The hospital record says she died in a small community clinic outside the city. They couldn't find any next of kin." Victoria's heart shattered. She sank into her chair, sobbing quietly. All the money, all the success, and she hadn't been there for the one person who had loved her unconditionally. After several minutes, she wiped her tears and stood, her voice trembling but determined. "Not anymore. These children won't suffer another day." When Daniel woke, he found Victoria sitting beside him with a gentle smile. "Morning," she said softly. "How are the babies?" "They're okay," he whispered. "Thank you for helping us, ma'am. I'll find a job soon, I promise. I'll pay you back." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything." He blinked in confusion. Then, "Why are you helping us?" Victoria took a deep breath, her voice breaking. "Because, Daniel, your mother was my sister." The boy stared at her, stunned. "My mom, she was Rachel Lane, my baby sister. We lost each other many years ago." Her eyes filled again. "I didn't even know she had children until now." Daniel's lips parted, trembling. "Mom, she told me she had a sister once, but said she was gone. She said she hoped one day we'd find her." Victoria covered her mouth, overcome. Then she reached out and took his hand. "You found me, Daniel. You did." The boy burst into tears and threw his arms around her. Victoria hugged him tightly, sobbing into his shoulder as the twins stirred softly in their crib. For the first time in decades, her heart felt whole. Over the next few days, the mansion transformed. A nursery was built for the twins. Daniel got new clothes, shoes, and toys. Though he didn't care about the material things, he cared about the love he and his siblings were finally receiving. Victoria couldn't stop watching them, every smile, every laugh. It was as if life had given her a second chance at family. Still, she needed closure. So one quiet afternoon, she visited the small town where Rachel had lived. The road was narrow, lined with old cottages. When she reached the community clinic, she met a nurse who remembered her sister. She was a kind woman, the nurse said softly, always putting others before herself, even when she was sick. She talked about her children every day. She said if anything happened to her, she hoped someone good would find them. Victoria's eyes welled up. She always believed in hope, she whispered. The nurse nodded. She said something else too, that her sister's name was Victoria. She wanted us to tell her if we ever found her family. At that, Victoria couldn't hold back anymore. She cried openly, her tears falling onto the old wooden floor. I'm here now, she whispered. I found them, Rachel. I promise I'll protect them, always. That evening, back at her mansion, she held the twins in her arms while Daniel sat beside her. The fire crackled softly. You know, she said, smiling through tears, your mother and I used to sit like this when we were your age. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and that was enough. Daniel looked up at her with innocent eyes. Will you tell us stories about her? Victoria nodded. Every night, so you'll never forget her, or how brave she was. Over time, Daniel began to change too. He went from a frightened boy who slept with one eye open to a confident child who laughed easily. He began to call Victoria Aunt Vicky, and eventually, when he slipped one night and called her mom, she didn't correct him. She just hugged him tighter. A year later, Victoria officially adopted all 3 children. The headlines read, Billionaire heiress adopts orphaned siblings found on the streets. But the world never knew the full truth, that it wasn't charity that had moved her, but love. On the anniversary of Rachel's passing, Victoria visited her grave. She knelt beside the tombstone, leaving a bouquet of white lilies. You gave them everything you could, she whispered. Now it's my turn. Behind her, Daniel and the twins played among the flowers, their laughter ringing through the air. Victoria smiled through her tears. You were right, Rachel, she murmured. Love really does find its way, even through the rain. And as the sun dipped behind the hills, the woman who once believed her heart was made of stone finally understood the real meaning of wealth. It wasn't the mansion, the cars, or the money. It was this, 3 little lives that filled her home with laughter, chaos, and love. The woman who once walked alone now had a family again. And the boy she found begging in the rain, he became the reason she learned to live again.